the extent of it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. A little bit of review. Our first lesson was the first chapter of the book was putting the devil in his place. The second one, I was going to take time to explain each of these, but I give you a YouTube link if you want to listen to any of these or watch them, so to say, because it's just me in the corner like that. Could listen to them to the last studies or go ahead and read the chapters. But there are some things that we talk about that are not in the book. The star that bit the dust. There is a serpent in our garden, and then the serpent's new religion last week, and specifically those 5 lies of occultism: reincarnation, esotericism, pantheism, relativism, hedonism, and how each of these, it's not just something outside of the church. I wanted to make that point last week very clearly, is that these very things have snuck into the church. And not just snuck into the church, there are churches that are very proud that they have special knowledge, that you yourself can be a god. You would think that's something that you would only hear in a cult, but you don't. You hear that in some evangelical churches now, that truth is relative, that pleasure is, God gave us, someone would even justify their sin by saying, well, the Bible does say God gave us all things to enjoy, right? But common sense would tell you there are some things that we can't enjoy, right? Or we that should not be enjoyed because they are sin, right? When we talk about relativism, especially in this day and age, people say, well, that's your truth, that's not my truth. Well, it's either true or it's not. You can't, it's like someone saying, well, I'm a little pregnant. Well, which one are you? Are you or are you not? Well, I don't know. I'm a little. No, you either are or you're not. That's a horrible example, but we'll stick with it. So this was important. I thought we have to go back to, because it's going to be something that's going to come up again and again in the lesson series. Genesis 3:15 says, and I will make enemies of you and the woman, and of your offspring and her descendants, and he shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. So Satan did not know what that God would take the initiative and reconcile humans to himself. Like, he didn't know this was going to happen. He sinned, and he wanted the world to fall along with him, and God made a plan. And he didn't make a plan after the fall. He made a plan before the creation of the earth, that he would have a plan to save human beings and not angels, right? So angels, when they sin individually, and they are held accountable to their sin, right? They're separated from God, but mankind is a little bit different. God created all the angels at one time. We don't know the number. We know that it's a high number because it says it's 10,000s times 10,000s, right? Myriads upon myriads. But human beings are being a little different. God made one human being, and then from him created the woman, or fashioned the woman, and then they would have children in their likeness, in their image, right? Though they are in the image of God. So if he can corrupt them, then he can corrupt all mankind, right? So only a third of the angels rebelled against God, but he figured, well, if I can corrupt mankind, then all of mankind is going to be against God. And I not that he's going to win. He knows he's a loser through and through. He lost. He's already lost, and we'll talk more about that today. But God takes the initiative in the battle. He says, I will make enemies of you and the woman. Right? This is not something that's just naturally going to happen. This is God. God is the one who initiates this, right? The serpent would be, and how does he do this? He's not like, I'm going to make Jessica really aggressive against Kathy. No, that's not what he's saying. He said, in other words, I'm going to choose one, right? I'm going to place my love on the one, and the other one, let do what he wants. So you would see both my justice and you would see my mercy, right? And because of that, they're going to be like this, because there's going to be jealousy. right? So I will make enemies of you and the woman and of your offspring and her descendants. So we know that the person would come through the woman in some way, shape, or form, right? But then it says, he shall bruise you on the head. This is very important because it specifically says he. So it's not a she. Now, in this day and age, that's up for grabs. He can be a she and all this and whatever. But assuming that God was just using the natural word, right? Biological, he, it's a male, will bruise you on the head and you shall bruise him on the heel. That is the same word. It means to destroy. It means a wound that cannot be fixed. It means death, right? But in some sense, they're both spiritual because Jesus, although he physically died, he'll never fully, no being, no person, right? Whether it's human being, angelic being, or God himself can die, right? Meaning they will not be eliminated forever, right? Or annihilated, or however it is you want to put it. We will all live forever. Point is, are we going to live separated from God, or are we going to live in the presence of God, right? Or continue to live in the presence of God in the case of angels. And his victory will be accomplished through suffering, right? God has made it very clear. His plan includes suffering, that this is not just going to be as the Muslims say that they call God the God of mercy. So in other words, I could just extend mercy to you. I could just forgive you because I'm merciful. Well, where's the justice? I was hurt. I was sinned against, and someone, right? That you want to see justice in this world. You don't just extend mercy out of it. He can only extend mercy because he gave his son to die in the place of sinners, right? So that said, get to today's lesson. The serpent strikes back. Chapter 5, the serpent strikes back. So in page 84 of your books, it says, among other things, right? Page 84, let me get there. It says, I'll read the whole little paragraph there, which includes what's on the board. If not innocently, at least naively? How would you pronounce that word?
Naively.
Naively? Isn't it weird when you read in your head? Yeah. You're a scholar.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you got to read out loud, you're like, oh, I don't think I've ever read that out loud before. Adam and Eve disobeyed God without realizing what they were setting in motion, without realizing that they were setting in motion a moral and spiritual earthquake that would reverberate throughout the universe. They, like Lucifer before them, had no idea of the moral and spiritual aftershocks their single act of disobedience might generate. That word, well, let me finish reading. They must have been surprised that one small evil produced an endless chain of larger ones. My mother-in-law lives in Puerto Rico, and they had one very big earthquake, unlike she's ever felt in her life. But after that, there was aftershocks, and they keep coming to the point that the poor woman sleeping on a sofa that's for two people. She's taller than I am. That's not saying much. I'm not that tall. But I'm saying this sofa is for three people, maybe four. So a person can lay across this even if they have to put their feet up. But she's in fetal position, sleeping on a sofa with a bag of essentials, like anything that she doesn't want to lose, next to her. Because the moment she feels a tremble, she says it sounds like a train's coming, right? That she'll grab it and run out of the house. So because her house is actually partly in a river. So if it shakes, the whole house could fall into the river with her in it. So, but think about that, the aftershocks, right? They sinned once, but that sin, that wasn't it. It wasn't a one and done, and now nothing's going to happen. And sometimes we justify our sin that way. We're thinking, well, it's just one little thing, right? Especially like with a lie. one little lie, you have to tell another lie to cover that lie. And eventually you lose track of your lies.
Yes.
And you even start to believe your own lies. Right? So not me. I'm saying other people, but not me. No, I'm just kidding. So the second thing is on the very next page, top of the page, the first full paragraph. When Satan learned that he would be crushed by the offspring of the woman, that is someone who would be born through the birth process, he tried to identify his protagonists and fight against him. He tried to kill anyone who looked like he might be the promised redeemer. The destruction of the royal seed would now be his highest priority. The history of this conflict dominates much of the Old Testament. It's interesting. It's not just the Old Testament, it's the New too, right? It's the New is a lot smaller, almost about a third of the Old Testament, but there's still a lot of him coming up against God's people. And he wants to come up against God's people. Even though the Messiah would be born, he still goes up against God's people. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. So three different ways he says, and let me minimize my big head over here so that you can actually see the rest of there it is. All right. So the strike against the family, and he's going to talk about dividing, corrupting, and killing. First one is dividing. So strike against the family. Satan was fanning Cain's anger. We read that Cain slew Abel because he was of the evil one. We'll read that passage in a moment. 1 John 3:12. Cain had opened his life to an unseen enemy. That's terrifying. Right? You open your life to an unseen enemy. And if the old saying, you better check yourself before you wreck yourself, right? I don't know who said that, what scholar said that, but somebody did. But it's true. There are so many things that I have learned lately to bite my tongue about. And it's been a blessing because given enough time, you realize what you would have said and how much trouble you would have gotten yourself into. And this is happening a lot. Like I find myself just kind of just staring, like don't say a word. Don't say a word. Yes.
That's like me with my 32-year-old daughter. She has a mouth on her, a potty mouth. My husband used to call it a kneading mouth. Maybe. Yeah, because you know how,
Yeah.
I don't know. A sailor. And there's things that she says, and I want to say something to her, but like you said, I bite my tongue. And trust me, my tongue is bleeding. Yeah, I can feel it, and I want to say something to her so bad, but I choose my battles with her.
Yes.
She's a difficult one. That's the one I told you I had to throw out. And now she moved around the corner, and now me and her are the best of friends. We got so close, not friends, but
yeah.
we were so close. We got better.
Yes.
And I brought it up to her. She's like, "Why did you say something?" I said, "Because I didn't want you to start yelling and swearing."
Yeah.
That's what she does.
And it's beautiful that it happened in that order.
Yeah.
Right. That you just kind of took it, and then she said, "Why did you tell me?" Because the reality is, it's just like us parents. If you would have just told me baloney, you still would have gave me that morphin mighty pela that you gave me, and you know it, right? But don't tell your parents to say that. That's the way I feel. And when parents say it's gonna hurt me more than it hurts you, I don't know. And it looked like it was pretty painful for you, but it looks at that from my hand, belt. Oh, I'm being silly, by the way. All right, so Cain had opened his life to an unseen enemy. Right? It's a terrifying thought that our anger is an opening, right? Paul, I believe, writing to the Ephesians, I could be wrong, talked about giving the devil a foothold, right? And he said, do not give the devil a foothold. I don't know if any of you ever played tag or whatnot or chased a sibling in your house, and the person just puts their foot right? And you can't close that if your life depended on it. Like, you weigh 40 pounds less than me. How can I not push this door closed? And then we push it and push it and push it and push it, and it's not going to happen, right? We give the devil a foothold, right? And even then, when if it is Paul, I don't know if it was Paul or Peter in one of his, or whoever that is, he's talking about anger. He says, "Do not let the sun go down on your anger," right? So the First John chapter 3, verses 9 to 12, it says, "No one has been born of God. No one who has been born of God practices sin." Now, the key word there is practices, right? It's not that we don't sin, right? First John actually starts by saying, if you say you don't sin, you're deceiving yourself, right? So it's not that we don't sin, we sin, right? He says, but is it a practice? Is this what you're trying to perfect? Is this where you want to live? If this is you, right? Because his seed remains in him. So there's that seed word connecting us back to Genesis. And he cannot sin continually because he has been born of God. By this, the children of God and the children of the devil are obvious. So this is the seed of and the seed of, right? The seed of the woman and the seed of the devil. The children of the devil and the children of God. And it says, are obvious. Anyone who does not practice righteousness, like this is their aim, this is their goal. They're living out this righteousness that has been given to them as a gift by Jesus Christ, is not of God, nor the one who does not love his brother or sister, right? And it's weird, right? Because you read when you read First John, it's very convicting because you're like, am I in? I'm pretty mean to my sister, right? And then I'm thinking about my human sister, right? But what about my brothers and sisters in the church? I mean, there's always somebody, right, that you see coming towards you and you make a way a little bit that way. And you have more, and that comes from common sense because you realize that you just don't get along that well, right? So it's better, like, let's just say, right? So when you read something like this, right, not practicing righteousness is not of God. But then if there was a period there, we're like, well, I'm good because I'm practicing righteousness. But there's a comma there and it says, nor the one who does not love his brother or sister. So for this is the message which you have heard from the beginning, that we are to love one another, not as Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. Right? It's when you think, well, I mean, I can't love everybody. Well, yeah, if you think of love as a feeling, right? Love is not, biblical love is not void of feeling, but it's meant to be led by a decision, right? Uh to do what is best for the other person, regardless of what it costs you. So Cain could have loved his brother, but he chose to love himself more. And and just think about it. God, he heard God's voice. It wasn't like us, and I'm not minimizing us. This is the word of God, but we are hearing God's voice when we read the word of God. But he audibly heard God's voice telling him, look, you know what to do. You can make this right. Now, sin's crouching at your door, but you must master it. Right? And even then, he's like, nah, I mean, it's premeditated murder. I mean, he it wasn't like in the heat of passion. He was angry. God spoke to him. Look, I'm taking him out. What was he thinking? Now, it's not just him, but obviously there is some kind of demonic influence. It says he was of the evil one, right? But he gave into that regard. He's still responsible for his own actions. Jessica.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm trying to get at. He was, was born, through Eve, and so he had God in him, but he was influenced externally by the devil. Is that how you're trying to say?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean everybody. We're all born of Eve,
Yeah,
right? In some way, shape, meaning we're descendant of
Yeah.
her and of Adam.
right.
But when we talk about the children of God and children of the devil, it's not. It is through a natural process, meaning someone from her, but we're all from her, right? But when you're talking about children of the devil and children of God, meaning those who practice righteousness and those who practice lawlessness, right? This is where they live. This is where they want to be. This is the distinction between one and the other. right? And obviously, the ones who practice righteousness, it's because of a new birth. It's not just because I want to be good and you want to be bad, right? That doesn't make you a child of God. Wanting to do better doesn't make you a child of God. New birth makes you a child of God. John, the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 11, 12, it says, now I'm having what they call a brain fart. Well, here, let me start here. It says, he came to his own, but his own did not receive him. But to those who did receive him, to them, he gave the right to be called children of God. Nobody else has that right. Only to those who received him. So he came to his own, but his own did not receive him. But to those who did receive him, or in other words, believed in him, placed their trust in him, right? He gave them, and only them, right to be called children of God. Other than that, people don't have the right. Sometimes we say, well, we're all children of God. Well, we're not all children of God. We're all created by God. And in some sense, his children, but not in that salvific sense. The word sounds something like that.
Reject the people who, reject out of free will. Pretty much, they opt out, check the opt out button.
Yeah.
The box. Opt-out box.
Yeah, I mean, it says he came to his own, and his own not received it. I mean, you have God, sometimes we have this assumption, right? That if I lived in those days, of course I would believe. An unbeliever would say that. If I had Jesus in front of me, how could I not believe? Then I would know he was a real person that lived in real time. I would see the miracles. If I could see the miracles, people raised from the dead. And they had no excuse. Jesus is right in front. Lazarus, come forth. And there he comes. Well, look at what he's doing, right? It's like, you gotta be kidding me. Well, oh, great, you're healing on the Sabbath. How, and this is, I'm being silly. But by the grace of God, that would be any one of us. We wouldn't be on this side, sitting here in our right mind in Bible study by choice at 8:30 in the morning, right? We would be somewhere else by choice, doing whatever else we wanted to do, right? All right, let's move on. So, to divide them. And it's not just this dividing when we think about who's going to move or not. For something. There it is. All right, we'll get back to the corrupting. I wanted to show you this. Why? I just think it's an awesome clip. But also it'll lead up to something here. Right now, Gabe was thinking
it was not our place to interfere. Yet we chose to try and help mankind. And when we disobeyed the Creator, he punished us. We were encrusted by your world, rocking. Still we taught. With our help, they rose from the dust, became great, and might to violence. Only one man protected us, your grandfather Methuselah. We were hunted, most of us killed. Those who lived were left prisoners in these stony shells, marooned upon this barren land. We begged the Creator to take us home, but he was always silent.
So at this point, Gabriel's thinking like, that's not in the Bible. But if it was, I would like to read that part. So these are supposed to be angels, right? And this is the person who created this comes from a Gnostic perspective. So it's not biblical, but he's using biblical a story, right? When you hear Noah and the sons of God goes into the daughters of men, and Nephilim, they lived on the earth in that days, and after those days. So these are supposed to be the Nephilim, right? But listen to how he describes them, and they're very careful about God calling God the Creator. not God, but the creator. I don't want to get into all that, but he says that the creator won't allow us to go back to him. Says they were they were thrown to the earth and encrusted by the earth. That's why they look like rock. And they looks like they have multiple arms. Those are their multiple wings, right? And they were just beings of light. I don't know if you could see it in the beginning. It was a little dark, but thank you, David, for turning off the light. But listen to what he said, what happens later on in the movie.
My Creator, forgive me. The Creator brings him home!
So the angel says, right? They got the spear in his chest. He knows he's about to die, and he says, forgive me. So there is no redemption for angels. God did not put that into plan. That according to scripture, right? What we know of God's plans, even before the beginning, he only made a plan for human beings. And the book of Hebrews makes that clear, that even Jesus was made like one of us, a human being, to die for human beings, not to die for angels. Now, why? I don't know, right? But God makes it clear. I will give mercy on whom I will give mercy. I'll be compassionate with whom I'm compassionate, right? To the others. Now, there are some people that believe in that it goes both ways, that he'll condemn one purposely, right? Like I'm choosing you to be separated from me, and the other one, I'm choosing you for life or to be with me, right? I don't believe that. I believe the Bible makes it clear, right, that God chooses people for himself, and the others he lets do what they want. And it's never going to be to run toward him, it's going to be to run away from him. So that the world would see his justice and his mercy, right? Two things that would have been hidden about him forever had we just known him as creator, right? So movie not biblically accurate, but the whole point of the clip was to show you that in his mind, right? Maybe this is merciful, this is good that God would save these angels, and not just these angels. They were encrusted on this earth because they disobeyed God, right? And they started to teach men how to do things, right? It doesn't say that it's evil, but when the Bible talks about these things, it does explicitly talk about them being evil. When we get into Genesis 6, and even this would probably, some of what he said predate Genesis 6, because we read in Genesis chapter 4 and chapter 5 of it was at that time that people Pastor Manriquez talked about creating culture, right? And but it was a culture and a kingdom opposite of God's, right? God's agenda, God's program, where they had multiple wives, where they would make weapons, where they were able to make even music. I'm not saying that that's implicitly evil, but we understand that happened. So according to this guy, that was all influenced by angels wanting to do good, and the angels were encrusted in by this earth, but then they're broken free. Now, one thing that was really cool, is that you've seen when the light goes back up and he says, the creator takes us home. The hair on my arms are literally standing up because I think of what that means for a believer. When you realize that you have been forgiven, your life should take a massive shift where your life means very little. In other words, like Paul says, to live is Christ and to die is gain. Paul didn't care where he went and when he went and who he preached to, if it was violent, if it was nice, if it was a good time, bad time, it didn't matter. Because as long as he was alive, he was living for Jesus, right? His whole life was reorientated around his identity. He got buried into the identity of Jesus Christ. So at that point, these rock monsters who are angels, they get up, and it's so horrible, right? In the movie, all of those people running are trying to get on the ark, and they're the angels and Noah are trying to keep them off of the ark. That's not what the Bible says. The ark was open. Anybody could have got on. Thousands and thousands of people could have been saved, but none of them chose to go on. But God himself called Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. Each one had a wife, not their wives, multiple wives. And God calls the animals, right? But there was room for people, right? So anyway, let's move on from there. So the next strike was against society, right? If God can corrupt them, then, right, not just divide them, not just divide families, but corrupt them. Now, right? So the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards. And when the sons of God came into the daughters of mankind, they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men of old, men of renown. When then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thought of their hearts was only evil continually. So the Lord was sorry that he made mankind on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart. Then the Lord said, I will wipe out mankind whom I've created from the face of the land, mankind and animals as well, and crawling things and birds of the sky, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Some say that when you read the genealogies in the Bible, that there may be gaps in there, but assuming that there are no gaps, when you do the math, Noah was 1 generation away from still knowing Adam. Physically. Right? They lived 900 years, a little bit less, a little bit more, right? And when you read all of, and this person begot this person, and they lived this many years. If you do that math, Noah did not know Adam, but the person, the generation before him did. Did he think about it, right? When it says, their thoughts were only evil continually. This was not just the line or the seed of the woman, right? This wasn't just meaning that there was actual corruption, that people all were killed in the flood, right? So if they were destroyed, they were not included in the ark. Right? And you're like, well, that's obvious. Well, yeah. But meaning like all of these other people, there were still people alive, right? From that we read of, right? But God said, nope, these are the only ones by grace I will save these people so that all people won't be wiped out, right? I'm going to start over again through them. The serpent, though gratified at the thought of the untimely death of the wicked, still had more work to do, right? So if he thought he can corrupt them, and it's fascinating in the book, he talks about 3 possible things, maybe some people say 4, but possible ways that you can read this. And some is the line of Seth, the line of Cain, godly line, ungodly line. But God wiped them all out. That's my point. That they were all ungodly in some way, shape, or form. They deserve judgment. They're all sinners under the curse of God, right? So even the God of Seth and the line of Cain, right? So he kind of put that one to the side, and he says it could have been that came. That's got to be me in some way, shape, or form. Just alert or something. It that the angels came and they themselves had relations with the woman. And he says, but can they do that physically? Right? If they can appear as a person, but can they actually generate another human being? Right. So it's a fascinating thought. Some people hold to that. And what he holds to is that there was some type of demonic possession where and so that these are those rulers, these men of renown, mighty men of old, right? But either way, it was angels. It wasn't the line of Seth. Give me 1 second, Jessica. Let me finish my thought. It wasn't the line of Seth or the line of it wasn't the line of Cain. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't the line of Cain that was cursed because of what happened in Genesis 6, because we read both in First John and also in First or Second Peter that these angels who went outside of where there were their boundaries, that God locked them up in chains until the last judgment. So this is not the devil, right? And other angels who disobeyed God, that God is still, they're still God's devil and God's fallen angels, that these in particular, they did something, right? And when you read the context, it talks about Genesis, it talks about Genesis 6. So it is assumed that you would put the two together, that it was angels in some way, shape, or form. But anyway, it was so bad that God said, I have to wipe them all out and start new. But it didn't, it's not just there, right? When you think about Seth and Noah, Abraham and Joseph and Moses and David, and Solomon, right? This idea of corrupting that line, of corrupting people, right? This happened with the families and with people, right? He was targeting, he knew it was this, it had this person has to come through Israel, through these people, right? So I'm going to target them. And even in the New Testament, right, he said, now Jesus is born, he still goes after God's people, Christians, right? But he's not done with Israel. So we read in the book of Revelation, he goes up against them, even knowing the seed has already been born. The promised Messiah has already come. It is Jesus Christ, but he still goes after them. I've shared this before. It's an awful illustration, but it's true. My best friend, right, who I considered my best friend growing up, I was about to eat my last banana now and later. Right? My last one. And he goes, can I have it? And I'm like, no, it's my last one. He waited till I opened it. I was about to put it in my mouth, and he slapped it out of my hand. And he says, if I can't have it, no, you ain't having it either. Right? That is the devil's attitude. If I can't be with God, I will blind people to the truth. And even if God opens their eyes to the truth, I will make your life so miserable that you will wonder, why did I even receive Christ as Savior? Right? We fall for the devil's lie. And if this is you, talk to me, talk to somebody, right? That you say to yourself, this is not that great. Right? You're not understanding what you have. You still want what you want. You still haven't died to self. And this is part of Pastor Manrique's coming series, right? It starts today and lasts for about another 6 to 8 weeks. And what it means to be a disciple. Right? Today we're going to talk about that. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live. Right? Dying to self. Right? If it doesn't start there, then there's still a whole lot of you mixed up in there, and you still have expectations and desires and wants. And when you say, I have been crucified with Christ, then you're saying, well, yeah, I have desires, I have wants, I have expectations, but all those must die, and I receive my new identity in Jesus Christ. Right? And that's not, for some people, it comes and you're like, that person's like night and day. They're on fire for Jesus. Give it time. That is what you call the honeymoon stage, right? God answering prayer, God everything. You see Jesus everywhere, but that will die, and then God will allow that to settle, and for you to really start living by faith. You will not see, you will not hear. It will be a dry season, but then is the time to start dying to self and recognizing your identity in Jesus Christ. It's not because he's doing something, it's because he has done something that I'm drawn to him, and I want him, and I want his life to be poured in and out of me. Okay, so this is what the Lord says, right? Because he talked about them going up against am I in the right place? Oh, here, let's go. 93. Let's go to 93. And it says, at the bottom, towards the bottom, kill them or corrupt them. That's the devil's strategy throughout the history of the world. Immortality, sexual perversion, pornography, child molestation. Our own society bears the marks of such corruption, especially the sexual perversion. We see this now more than ever, right? And he wants us to think differently, right? To corrupt, like there's no truth. That's your truth. That's not my truth, right? It's such a bizarre world that we live in now. Now, it may not be for younger people, right? Sometimes it's even confusing because you're living this time, Sarah, Kat. You're living in this time, Gabe. You're living in this time. Do you really don't have anything to like compare it to, right? But us older people, right? We did what is natural to you and what you see all the day. This still is like in our face. When we see it, we are appalled. To some extent, both of you are just used to it. It is normal. It is what you see every day and all the time. But it wasn't like that before. There's a reason why the Q is an LGBTQ, right? Right? It was queer. It wasn't normal, right? But now it's become a point of pride to talk about that, right? It wasn't before. It was like you understood something's not right. Now it's like, no, this is me. You not only this is me, but you must accept me for who I am. Right? Not tolerate me, accept me. This is who I am, but even promote me. Right?
Satan's counterfeit, making it normalized when it's not normal.
Yeah. And it's part of a plan. None of this happened by accident. And it was, and from what I understand, this came from I'm just speaking out of turn here. I have to go back and look. I think it came from the Communist Manifesto. It was an understanding, a plan that it would how to implement. Forget the communist thing. I got to research it. I got to remember, go back and look at it again. It was part of something, had nothing to do with LGBTQ.
Yeah.
But they knew that if we could follow this plan in this much time, it's going to be normal.
Yeah.
And then we can become militant about it. So it wasn't, and it started off small by let's introduce small characters in movies and TV programs, and it's just a silly thing. But then it became a serious thing, and then it became a normal thing, and now it is a encouraged thing. right? But that was a plan. It didn't just happen, evolve naturally over time. It was a plan from the beginning, So, I'm sorry, let's go on. I'm already taking up too much of your time. Sarah.
In my school, in Warren, they have clubs specifically for that.
Yes.
Or a social group specifically for that.
Yeah.
So that students could, like, express themselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes if a girl feels like a guy, they will change their ID without the parents knowing, like, everything is without the parents knowing.
Yeah.
And a lot, because they say that a lot of the parents, like, would be against it. And we say that it's, that this kid is normal for doing it, and it's normalized that students will talk about it freely in the educational place.
Yeah. From what I understand, I don't know, you know, I don't put a lot of stock in statistics because statistics will always, I can quote a statistic because it supports what I'm saying. But statistically speaking, I've heard it said that even with that, the suicidal rate among people with gender dysphoria is still high. So you would think, as long as someone accepts me, then I don't feel like I have to take my own life. That's not the truth, right? But fascinating. Is it still called glass?
It's,
Was it called that at one time?
yeah. Yeah, it's called Gay Straight Alliance. It's like GSA, and they,
Because there was something that was started some time ago by one of our members here at Emmanuel Bible Church. She wasn't a member or a Christian, but she was a student at Morton. And some of you remember Allison Lloyd,
Yes.
right? Allison she herself was a lesbian, but she wanted to start a gay straight alliance in school. So she created that club, right? And she became a believer and still would have that heart to reach out to people who are not straight, right? Who are gay and have some type of relationship with them. But with her not being there, that's taken on a whole different meaning, And understand, we were never called to just escape the world and not be with people, but the very opposite, to be with people so that we can influence them with our lips, but also with our life. But okay, let me go. I got one point to make. I'll let you guys go. The curse of Jeconiah, right? This one wasn't in the book, but I find this one fascinating. This is what the Lord says. Write this down, write this man down. Jeconiah was a king of Judah, right? This is the line of kings. There was a promise from God to David that someone from your throne will always rule, and the Messiah would come from not just the line and the tribe of Judah, but specifically from David, from his loins, from David's person, right? One of his sons. He says, write this man down as childless, a man who will not prosper in his days, for no man among his descendants will prosper sitting on the throne of David or ruling again in Judah. Right? This is the Lord saying this. So how is that going to work? Right? The devil probably thought, that's it. Where's the Messiah going to come from now? The Lord himself cursed them, right? But ruling again in Judah, the throne of David, no man among his descendants. So how did that work out? Right? When we read the book of Matthew, we have a genealogy that is a little bit different from the genealogy in the book of Luke. Right? The book of Matthew gives the genealogy of Joseph that comes from this man, right? Physically. But Jesus was the adopted son of Joseph. So he received every right from him, including the right to rule as king of Judah, right? But then we have the genealogy in Luke, which is, it says, they talk about Joseph, but they believe that this is Mary's genealogy, and it goes all the way back down to Adam, the son of God. right? So even then, the devil thought, that's it, I won. And God said, man, you're so stupid. You're so stupid. I already have a plan. I have everything mapped out. There's nothing you can't do that's going to surprise me. Nothing. So he thought he had won. And the account they give in the book is fascinating, that this woman who was the mother of one of the kings, right, of Judah, once other people came, I forgot who they were, they came and they killed her sons. She went and killed all of her grandsons, her own grandsons, so that she could rule as queen. Now that was right in the face of God, because God said he will crush his head. Right? So if she thought, even if it was a good thing, I will rule Judah righteously, but I need to get rid of everybody else, so I can. Even if she thought that, it would be against God's will, not just because she was a woman. Don't just hear that. Don't let the devil allow you to hear that, right? Because God said it would be through a he, and that he is Jesus Christ. Okay, so the last one. The strike against the royal seed. So you have Abel in Genesis, Moses in Exodus, Joash in Second Chronicles. Joash is the son, one of the sons or the grandsons of that king that was hidden so that she couldn't kill him, so that he would continue that line, right? Devil thought, yes, I won. No, there's someone hidden you don't know about. Right? Jesus in the book of Matthew, Israel in Revelation, all of these times, the time that someone was killed, right? Or they just went off, like in Exodus. You know what? Kill all the newborns, kill all the kids. Messiah's got to be in there somewhere. Just kill them all, right? And then with Joash with his grandma, and then Jesus, right? When Jesus was born, they gave that the Magi came and left, and then he said, "You need to go and kill all the kids 2 and under, right?" The devil trying to do something, but even then, even after he knew that the seed was born, the seed of the woman who would crush his head, it is Jesus Christ. He still goes after Israel, and you see Israel in the book of Revelation that he goes full on after her. But even then, God says that he puts a razor into a place and he's going to protect her until this time is done, right? Before Christ was born, there was at least one serious attempt to destroy the possibility of a coming redeemer, right? Page 96. Let me see if I underline something for us to read. It says, because of the promise God made to David, Satan knew that the seed of the woman would have to come through David's lineage. Right? That's the sentence that's right after here on page 96. So the last portion says certain principles by which Satan operates are beginning to emerge. Satan's primary strategy is directed against God's people. God's people, Israel in the Old Testament, God's people, the church in the New Testament. And he continues relentlessly after both of them. Look, I have to do this sooner than later. I need to get rid of this, and from here to the floor, draw a map of just Israel, right? Israel, what's above and below. And I would like on that whole wall to draw a map of the world, so I can walk there and physically show you where these places are at. Israel is nothing. There is no reason why that should be important in this world. But it is a strategic land bridge from Europe to Africa to Asia. And that's where God placed his people, where he knew they would be in the middle of it all. And they're nothing. But yet you have all of these different countries wanting to wipe them off the map of the earth. Right? When you hear, especially young people, right? You see these protests and Palestine, and from the river to the sea, right? And it sounds good. It sounds like you're pro-Palestinian, but they're also making it very clear they're pro Hamas, right? These militant Muslims have made it very clear. Israel is little safe. Look at what their goal in writing, and they know this, is to wipe them off the face of the earth. Who do you think big Satan is? Anybody know? Huh?
USA.
That's right. Okay, if this is their goal for them, and they call them little Satan, we are big Satan. The United States of America is big Satan. What plans do you think they have for us? You keep flying that flag and keep funding this organization, right? And it's not that we are to hate Palestinians, but even Palestinians, right? People who live there. Do you know that the government of Israel is not governed by only Jewish people? Their council of people who rule, there's people of, I don't know, it's like 12 or more different religions represented there, right? And they all have say. There, it's not like if it's just Jewish people and like it is Sharia law for the Muslims. No, I don't know who said it, but he said it very well. He said, if Israel were to stop defending themselves, no, let's put it the other way. If Israel were to stop defending themselves today, they would be wiped off the face of the earth. Right? Now, if the other side were to stop being the aggressors, then there would be peace. Because Israel's not trying to hurt anything. Okay. Now, if you have thoughts about this, if you're like, well, what about these? If we don't have time to do this now, but talk to me or to somebody about that, because you may have mixed feelings about it. There is no way, shape, and form you look at what's going on now and saying this is okay. It was fascinating to hear Netanyahu say that there was, I don't know how many thousands of trucks that they left through for food and how many tons of food. He says this is enough food for every single man, woman, and child to have thousands of calories, right? Thousands of calories. He says if it's not getting to them, it's because Hamas or some other organization is stealing it.
Yeah.
And we know this to be true because if children are starving in Africa, it's not because there is no food. It's because any relief that comes to them, the tyrants of that where they live, they are taking that all for themselves and selling it off to other people. But it's not because there is a lack of food. These are things that we need to know and to understand and to hear, right? All Satan's victories are illusionary, right? He thinks he's winning. It looks good, but no victory is an actual victory. It's just more judgment on itself. Our victory is real. Our victory is real. We don't fight for victory. We are meant to fight from it. We already have it. Jesus has already conquered. Do you know what Nike means? You know, in the gym shoe, Nike? That means conqueror. Yeah, it's a Greek word. And it says, even in the book of 1 John, it says, we are more than conquerors. You would read that word Nike right there. Now, the next time you see a pair of Nikes, think about that. We are more than conquerors in the person of Jesus Christ. Right? So, big idea for today. To strike back against God's devil, to strike back against God is the devil's will. The seed of the woman he targets to divide, corrupt, and kill. Right? I kept you guys way too long again. If you have any questions, comments, complaints, please feel free to see me. Yes. I'm telling you, I need that. I would love to be able to just walk over here. Oh,
They compared it to Lake Michigan.
yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing and insignificant. It's not even fertile land because of the way it is in the mountains. And it's like if God didn't do something, it wouldn't be what it is. What it is. The belly button right? They say, but, all right, let's pray. Father, thank you again for this time. Father, thank you for this patient class, willing to hear me ramble on for so long after we're supposed to be done. Father, I need to respect time. Help me to prepare well and help me to make the most use of this time, even stopping and finishing next week if it has to be, so that we would be able to have time to go down, drink some coffee, talk to people before service starts. Father, would you open our ears and our hearts to receive the message that will be preached and taught today?